In the depths of the darkest woods, a flickering fire casts eerie shadows against the ancient trees. It is here, in this spine-chilling setting, that tales of terror come alive. Whispers of ghosts and ghouls, of mysteries unsolved, and creatures unseen hang heavy in the air. This is no ordinary campfire gathering. It is a gathering of souls hungry for the thrill of the unknown. With bated breath, they listen to chilling stories that will haunt their dreams for nights to come. From the flicker of the flames to the rustle of the leaves, fear lurks around every corner. Brace yourselves, for this is a journey into the dark recesses of your imagination. Are you ready to embark on this bone-chilling adventure? The dense woods loomed, their secrets concealed by the intertwining branches that reached out like skeletal fingers. What started as an innocent exploration of the untamed wilderness had morphed into a relentless descent into a realm of unspeakable horrors. As I ventured deeper into the forest, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the woods into an unsettling twilight. The once prominent trail faded into a confusing web of paths, and the encroaching darkness seemed to warp the landscape, distorting my sense of direction. A rustle in the underbrush shattered the oppressive silence. I strained to discern its origin, the hair on the back of my neck prickling with unease. The whispers began, an eerie symphony of unsettling voices that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the woods. Frightening words slithered through the air, a cacophony of malevolent murmurs that toyed with my sanity. I quickened my pace, the crunch of leaves beneath my boots drowned out by the spectral chorus. The shadows morphed into elusive figures, dancing at the edge of my vision. Unseen eyes watched, and the forest pulsed with an otherworldly energy. A guttural howl pierced the air, closer now, and a primal fear gripped me. The whispers intensified, coalescing into haunting threats that echoed my every step. My flashlight flickered, casting fleeting glimpses of twisted forms that vanished with each erratic pulse of light. With every breath, the unseen entities drew nearer, their intentions unknown but undoubtedly malicious. Panic set in as the whispers took on a feverish pitch, their words carving into my consciousness like a malevolent force determined to unravel my sanity. I stumbled into a clearing, the moon casting an eerie glow on the scene. The whispers subsided, replaced by an ominous stillness that hung in the air. Exhausted and disoriented, I hesitated, my senses on high alert. Suddenly, a sharp snap echoed through the clearing, and the whispers erupted into a chorus of frenzied excitement. I spun around, my flashlight revealing an indistinct figure at the edge of the trees. It stood there, an amalgamation of shadow and ethereal glow, its form undulating with an otherworldly grace. The chase began. Heart pounding, I sprinted through the clearing, the creature closing the distance with unnatural speed. The whispers transformed into chilling taunts, the creature's voice weaving through the darkness like a vengeful specter. Each step fueled the relentless pursuit, and the forest seemed to conspire against me, the very trees twisting to block my escape. My breath came in ragged gasps as I navigated the labyrinthine terrain. The creature's unearthly presence lingered just behind, its breath hot on my neck. Fear propelled me forward, the unseen force nipping at my heels like a relentless predator. Through the tangled underbrush and over uneven terrain, I pushed my body to its limits. The creature, a relentless specter in pursuit, seemed to feed on my terror. The whispers grew louder, the haunting words forming a nightmarish chorus that threatened to consume me. Just when it seemed my strength would fail, I burst into another moonlit clearing. The creature hesitated at the edge, its shadowy form recoiling from the unearthly glow. I seized the moment, my legs carrying me away from the creature's reach. The whispers lingered, a haunting echo in the night, as I stumbled out of the woods. The forest, alive with unseen terrors, released its grip on me. The moon hung high above, casting its silvery light on the edge of the haunted wilderness. The beings, whether figments of a tortured imagination or ancient guardians of the forest, remained hidden in the shadows. The haunted wilderness had tested my resolve, leaving me with a chilling tale of whispers, pursuit, and an unshakable fear of the unknown. The crisp autumn air hung heavy with the scent of damp leaves and the distant promise of rain as I drove my beat-up pickup truck down the winding back roads of rural Arkansas, on a journey that would lead me from the forgotten corners of Camden to the haunted remnants of Girden. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, casting the landscape into shadows that danced along the edges of my imagination. I had heard the rumors, tales of haunted places scattered across these forsaken roads where the veil between the living and the dead seemed thin enough to touch. My destination was an abandoned farmhouse nestled in the heart of the Ozarks, just off Highway 67. It was said to be haunted by the ghosts of a family who met a tragic end decades ago. Intrigued by the stories, I couldn't resist the pull to explore the eeriness that clung to this decaying relic of the past. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I turned off 67 onto an even narrower path, barely visible in the dim glow of my headlights. The air seemed to thicken as I approached the farmhouse, the once majestic structure now reduced to a skeletal frame. The windows, empty eyes staring out into the night, whispered tales of sorrow and despair. My heart quickened as I parked the truck along the swamp road, and an unsettling silence enveloped the area. The only sound was the distant howl of a lone coyote, echoing through the hills. I took a deep breath and stepped out into the darkness, my boots crunching on the gravel. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the secrets of the land. As I approached the farmhouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching my every move. The moonlight revealed the peeling paint and rotting wood, creating grotesque shadows that seemed to come alive with each step. I pushed open the creaking door, and the musty scent of decay assaulted my senses. The air inside felt heavy, as if the ghosts of the past were reluctant to release their grip on this forsaken place. I pulled out my flashlight, its feeble beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. The floor groaned beneath my weight as I cautiously made my way through the desolate rooms. The stories spoke of a tragedy that unfolded within these walls, a family torn apart by madness and despair. The rooms echoed with the faint whispers of the past, and the walls seemed to close in on me as I delved deeper into the heart of the farmhouse. A sudden chill gripped the air, and I could see my breath as I exhaled, my nerves on edge. In the dim light, I stumbled upon an old photograph lying on a dusty table. The family in the picture stared back at me with hollow eyes, frozen in a moment of time that had long since soured. I shivered, feeling an inexplicable connection to their sorrow. As I continued my exploration, the air grew colder, and the oppressive weight of the past pressed down on my shoulders. A distant sound echoed through the house, a soft, haunting melody that seemed to drift from nowhere and everywhere at once. My pulse quickened as I followed the ghostly tune, each note sending a shiver down my spine. The melody led me to a decaying staircase, and I hesitated before ascending into the unknown. On the second floor, the air was thick with the residue of forgotten memories. The melody grew louder, filling the desolate space with a mournful lament. I approached a door at the end of the hallway, the source of the haunting melody. With trepidation, I pushed it open, revealing a room frozen in time. A tattered crib stood in one corner, surrounded by faded toys and a lingering sense of innocence lost. The ghostly melody emanated from a music box on a dusty dresser. I approached it, my breath catching in my throat. As my fingers brushed against the cold metal, the haunting melody ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and the room became a canvas of shadows. I felt a presence behind me, a whisper of breath on the back of my neck. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light that danced across the room. Panic set in as I turned, expecting to confront the unseen force that lingered in the darkness. But there was nothing. The room was empty, the air still and heavy. I stood alone, surrounded by the ghosts of the past. The oppressive silence pressed against my eardrums, and the weight of unseen eyes bore into my soul. The realization dawned upon me. I was not alone, and the spirits that dwelled within these haunted walls were far from at peace. I stumbled back from the dresser, my heart pounding in my chest as the room plunged into an oppressive darkness. The air seemed to thicken, and an otherworldly presence enveloped the room. A guttural whisper echoed through the silence, a voice that clawed at the edges of sanity. "What for me?" the voice murmured, sending a shiver down my spine. I fumbled for words, but my tongue felt heavy, paralyzed by the malevolence that hung in the air. From the shadows emerged a figure, a silhouette that seemed to absorb what little light remained. Its eyes glowed with an unholy intensity, fixated on me with a hunger that sent a chill through my soul. I could barely make out the contours of its face, a twisted mask of torment and malevolence. I took a hesitant step backward, the floor creaking beneath my weight. The sinister entity remained unmoved, its gaze unrelenting. "What for me?" Again it hissed, the voice resonating with an otherworldly echo. Desperation clawed at my chest, and I racked my brain for something, anything, that might appease the entity. In my wallet, I found a worn photograph, a picture of my family taken on a summer day in the Ozark mountains. With a trembling hand, I held it out as an offering. The entity snatched the photograph from my grasp, and for a moment the room flickered with an eerie light. The image on the photo distorted, the faces contorting into grotesque expressions of anguish. A sinister laughter filled the air, echoing through the desolate rooms. As the room plunged back into darkness, I felt a cold hand close around my wrist. Panic surged through me as the entity demanded, "Your fear." I tried to pull away, but the grip tightened, icy tendrils of dread snaking through my veins. The room seemed to close in on me, and the air became thick with an oppressive force. I closed my eyes, my mind racing for a way to escape this unholy encounter. In that moment, a chilling memory seized me, a recollection of a legend whispered among the locals in Camden. They spoke of a malevolent entity that fed on the fear of those who dared trespass its domain. It craved the raw, unbridled terror that lingered in the hearts of the living. Summoning every ounce of courage, I resisted the fear that threatened to consume me. "I won't feed your hunger," I declared, my voice trembling but resolute. "I won't be a puppet to you." The entity recoiled, its grip loosening. The room pulsated with a volatile energy, caught between the realms of the living and the dead. For a moment, time hung suspended, and then the shadows receded, releasing me from their icy grasp. As the entity retreated into the darkness, the room filled with a chilling silence. I stumbled backward, the weight of the encounter settling upon me like a heavy cloak. The once haunting melody resumed, fading into the background as I fled from the accursed room, down the creaking staircase, and out into the cool night air. As I stumbled outside, the farmhouse was now a silhouette against the moonlit sky. It seemed to sigh with a spectral release. The back roads, once a labyrinth of despair, opened up before me as I hurried back to my truck. The echoes of the sinister entity lingered, a reminder that some hauntings demanded more than just a glimpse into the past. They hungered for the very essence of the living, leaving behind an indelible mark on those who dared to tread the line between the realms of the living and the dead. I sped away from the haunted farmhouse, leaving behind the echoes of a tragedy that refused to be forgotten. The back roads stretched out before me like a web of secrets, each turn hiding the untold stories of those who had walked these paths before. The darkness clung to the corners of my vision, and the whispers of the past lingered in the air. As I drove away from that forsaken place, I couldn't shake the feeling that a part of the haunted farmhouse had latched onto my soul. The back roads of rural Arkansas, from Camden to Camden, held secrets that transcended time, and the ghosts that wandered those forgotten paths would forever haunt the edges of my reality. The line between the living and the dead blurred, and the memory of that chilling night on those very dirt roads would forever cast its shadow on the back roads of my mind. In the small town of Ravenswood, Nestled between the mist-covered hills and ancient forests, there stood an old funeral home that bore the weight of its haunted past. Stories of unexplained occurrences and ghostly apparitions surrounded the place, but like any good ghost story, no one took them seriously until they experienced it for themselves. It all began when I received the call that my grandmother had passed away. Having lost touch with her years ago, the news was a strange mix of sadness and distant memories. The funeral arrangements were made at Ravenswood Funeral Home, a place I had never heard of before. As I approached the eerie building, this place had a creepy vibe, but I brushed it off as nerves. Still, I couldn't shake off the chill that ran down my spine. The funeral home was adorned with dark, weathered curtains that seemed to suck the life out of you as you passed by. When I stepped inside, the air grew heavy, and the scent of aged wood and lingering grief filled my nostrils. The funeral director, a stoic man with sunken eyes, greeted me with a rehearsed sympathy that failed to mask the underlying discomfort in his gaze. The funeral proceeded in a haze of sorrow and awkward condolences. As I sat alone in the front row, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the creaking floorboards echoed like distant whispers. My mind wandered back to my grandmother and the stories she used to tell, tales of restless spirits and unfinished business. After the service, the funeral director led me to a dimly lit room to sign some paperwork. His hands trembled as he handed me the pen, and for a moment, his eyes met mine with a silent plea. As I scrawled my signature, the room seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if the very walls were alive with the memories of those who had passed through. That night, as I lay in the guest room of my grandmother's old house, I was awakened by a soft, mournful sound drifting through the air. The haunting notes seemed to emanate from the funeral home across the street. Curiosity got the best of me, and I followed the sound, finding myself standing before the imposing building in the moonlit night. The front door creaked open as if inviting me inside. Hesitant but driven by an unseen force, I stepped into the dimly lit foyer. The air was thick and heavy. I could feel eyes upon me. This place was surely haunted, I thought to myself. Just leave now, I kept on repeating in my head. Every inch of my gut was trying to get me to step out of those walls, yet my body would not, as though being controlled by something not of this world. As I explored the funeral home, the boundary between the living and the dead blurred. I heard the muffled sobs of grieving souls, their sorrow lingering in the air like a palpable force. The rooms seemed to shift and warp, trapping me in a maze of memories and regrets. Faces of long-forgotten mourners stared at me from faded photographs, their eyes pleading for release. In the midst of this dance, I stumbled upon a forgotten room hidden at the end of a long corridor. The door groaned open, revealing a dusty chamber filled with old trinkets and forgotten mementos. Among them was a weathered diary, its pages filled with my grandmother's elegant handwriting. As I read her words, the room seemed to come alive with echoes of the past. My grandmother had been a caretaker of the funeral home, a guardian of the spirits that lingered between worlds. She spoke of a dark secret that bound the souls to the building, a secret that needed to be uncovered for them to find peace. Driven by a newfound purpose, I delved deeper into the mysteries that haunted Ravenswood Funeral Home. The veil between the living and the dead grew thinner with each revelation, and the spirits became more restless. The funeral director, burdened by the weight of his own guilt, revealed the truth behind the force that held the souls captive. The funeral home had been built atop an ancient burial ground, and the spirits of the departed were trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment. The only way to break the curse was to unearth the past, to confront the darkness that had festered for generations. As I stood before the crumbling headstones, a chilling wind whispered the names of the forgotten, urging me to set them free. In the dead of night, guided by the ethereal glow of the moon, I unearthed the truth buried beneath the soil. The spirits, freed from their shackles, ascended into the night sky, their mournful cries replaced by a sense of peace that settled over Ravenswood. As dawn broke, the funeral home stood silent, its haunted past laid to rest. Or so I thought. There was a sinister feel to the funeral home, and the fainting peace that fell over now turned to darkness. The funeral director's face twisted into a sinister grin, revealing that I'd unleashed something far worse. The atmosphere grew tense as the shadows around me seemed to come alive. The once freed spirits turned malevolent, their mournful cries replaced by menacing whispers. The funeral director's eyes glowed with an evil light, and the air thickened with a sense of impending doom. I tried to leave, but the doors slammed shut, trapping me inside. The temperature dropped, and an invisible force pressed against me. The room seemed to close in as the walls pulsed with a malevolent energy. Panic set in as I realized that I had unwittingly unleashed a darker force, and now it sought to claim me. In the dim light, the funeral director's voice echoed, revealing the sinister truth behind the curse. The spirits I had released were a distraction, a ruse to unleash an evil entity that thrived on suffering. As the shadows closed in, I felt a cold grip around my throat, choking the life out of me. In that moment of terror, I saw the faces of the spirits I had set free contorted with agony. Their pleas for release turned into tormented screams. The room echoed with the dark laughter of the unleashed entity as it fed on the despair it had unleashed. In the struggle against the evil force in the funeral home, I fought to break free from its suffocating grip. The room seemed to loosen its hold, and for a moment, I believed I had escaped its clutches. Gasping for breath, I stumbled out of the funeral home as the first light of dawn pierced through the darkness. As I emerged into the cool morning air, a false sense of relief washed over me. The funeral home stood silent, and the town seemed to return to normalcy. However, an unsettling feeling lingered, like a whisper in the back of my mind. Days turned into nights, and life went on. But an inexplicable heaviness followed me. Shadows flickered at the corner of my vision, and the air occasionally chilled for no apparent reason. I tried to convince myself that it was just residual fear from the haunting experience. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One evening, as I passed a reflective surface, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection, but it was distorted. A dark figure, a silhouette of the malevolent force from the funeral home, lingered behind me. Peering from the corner of my eye, trying to get a better look, long, dark threads of hair cover its pale white face, which I could not make out any features. Panic set in as I turned to confront it, but the figure vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of unease. In the weeks that followed, the presence persisted. I would hear faint whispers, echoes of the funeral home's sinister secrets. Sleep became elusive as nightmares filled with shadows and contorted faces haunted my nights. The boundary between reality and the supernatural blurred, and the malevolent force seemed to seep into every facet of my life. Desperation set in as I sought answers. I revisited the funeral home, hoping to find a way to sever the connection. The air was thick with an ominous energy, and the room seemed to mock me with their silence. In the dim light, the funeral director's laughter echoed, a chilling reminder of the darkness that clung to me. As I delved deeper into the secrets of the funeral home, I discovered a horrifying truth. A part of me had been left behind. The force had claimed a piece of my soul, a shadow that mirrored the darkness within the funeral home. It followed me, feeding on my thoughts and regrets. No matter where I went, the evil force persisted, a companion that whispered in the silence and cast a shadow on my every step. I became a prisoner of my own haunting, a living conduit for the darkness that once lurked within the funeral home. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred as I grappled with the realization that some horrors can never be escaped, and the price of meddling with the supernatural is a piece of one's own soul forever lost.